Hello, my name is Alex Ars, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about the Great Barbarian Conspiracy. Welcome back. So in today's episode, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the Great Barbarian Conspiracy. Now, the Great Barbarian Conspiracy is actually quite interesting because it relies on the writings of a guy called Marcellinus. Now, he was living in Antioch, which obviously is in Syria, and so because of that, his entire account of the Great Barbarian Conspiracy can actually be quite confusing at points, but we've got a traditional view of it at least. Now, the idea is that Britain was attacked by the Scots, who obviously came from Ireland, the Picts, who come from what is today modern-day Scotland, another group called the Atacoti, who are thought to have come from the Western Isles, but we are really unsure about that. They could be another Irish tribe, and also at the same time, the Saxons. So because of that, Britain was attacked. At the same time, northern Gaul is attacked by the Franks and Saxons, cutting Britain off from all support. This becomes an absolute nightmare because at the same time the garrison rebels. There is even possibly a suggestion that some of the garrison were bribed, and then also that possibly Hadrian's Wall may have just let them through. This is a very interesting one because it's a bit hard to tell what is obviously Marcellinus sitting in Antioch writing stuff down and showing a total breakdown of Roman society and what is actually the reality of what was occurring. So it's a bit of an interesting one right there. But they say that the garrison of Britain become rebels and they are little better than bandits, and there's also a slave rebellion at the same time. So slaves break free and they're running around the countryside killing people and destroying things. There is mass destruction of settlements, people are killed, lots of mass death, real issues going on. Two senior officers taken out. You've got Nicadius, who is the Comte Maritime Tactorius, or seems to be a naval officer, and he is definitely killed. And then there's also the Dux Britannicum full of ladies, and he is either captured or besieged in York and he can't act. The southern garrison then bunkers right down and the north is cut off from support and it is raided and attacked. So you've got quite a desperate situation going on where the senior military commander of Britain is nullified, and then a senior officer who seems to be involved somewhat in naval actions is also taken out of the picture. And so that makes things very difficult. And so because of this, the Germanic raiders, who are possibly Franks and Saxons, along the Picts and the Scoti, are given free rein to run around Britain. Now, it seems at the same time, what makes things even more difficult is there's a group called the Arcani, and the Arcani have been translated as like frontier scouts, almost like forward observers. They are either spies or some sort of unit that are watching enemy forces, but it can also be translated as shepherds. So I'm not entirely sure exactly what they were, but these guys, the Arcani, are operating and they seem to have been compromised in some way or have been given false reports. So when they give false reports, that suddenly means that all of a sudden there's no warning for this great conspiracy or this assault. So Britain is cut off and there's widespread chaos going on for a long period of time. Two senior officers are sent by the emperor. Initially, we have the Comte Domesticorum, who is a field officer as a part of the emperor's personal army, a guy called Severus, but he's recalled again because of fighting on the Rhine. And then his replacement is a guy called Jovannes, who is a Magister Equitum, or a senior commander of cavalry. Again, he's called back to the Rhineland because the fighting on the Rhineland is seen as way more important than this rebellion in Britain. Britain can be brought back in at a later point. If the Rhineland breaks, you're going to have serious problems in Gaul. So the emperor prioritizes focusing on the Rhineland rather than on the British Isles. Following on from this, they then send Flavius Theodorus. He is sent over with 4 units, which is the Batvi, the Heruli, the Ove, and the Victoris. And the Batvi and Heruli are often deployed together during this late Roman period. So these 4 units come across, and he then also comes with his son Theodosius, who will in the future be Theodosius I, a very important emperor, and likely his nephew as well, Magistus Maximus, who is a usurper from Britain, who becomes very important because a lot of the sort of the Welsh annals and stuff like that use him as a mythological ancestor figure to legitimize a lot of the early Welsh kingdoms. So these are 2 very important figures within Roman history, but then also early medieval history as well. Theodorus then secures London and then breaks up his units and starts using them to hunt down individual raiding war bands. They start breaking them up, and it's said that the war bands are so laden down with plunder and booty, and alongside this as well with cattle, that they just can't move quickly. So the army is quickly able to break down these war bands, put down the slave revolt, and what happens as well is that deserting soldiers are given pardons so that immediately they can restore order, they can put the army back in place, and things become easier. He restores wealth back to those who have lost it, which immediately then puts the province back into a more stable situation and then enables for basically more order, more structure, and also for a fight back against the remaining barbarians, the Scotii, the Picts, the Saxons, and any Franks who were in Britain at this time. And so that really helps the whole situation. A new dux and a new vicar of the province are appointed, Dulcius and Civitas, and so because of that, the province is then given a new structure, a new political leadership. At the same time though, there's also a new usurper, Valentinus, and he's a Pannonian, which is now modern-day Hungary. Interestingly enough, the Pannonians are known as being quite a brutal people during the Roman period, and so he tries to do sort of a usurping, or in the wake of the revolt, he is quickly captured by the Dux and he's executed. And anyone who's involved in his revolt isn't treated as harshly. It's not a brutal putting down or like hunting down of people who've been involved, because again, they don't want to cause the province to be too harmed. It's seen as quite an easy, relaxed inquiry. People are told off and then things are brought back into calmness again so that the province can prosper. Now, there may have been a punitive campaign against some elements of the Picts, the Scotii, and also possibly the Saxons, but it's very hard to tell. But what we do know is the Attacoti, who seem to be up here in the Western Isles, possibly, we're not entirely certain, but the Attacoti, 4 units of them are raised for the Eastern Roman Empire, and they are taken over and they're deployed into the area around Greece and that sort of location as well. So it's quite an interesting one because there's no other units. There aren't units of Picts, there aren't units of Scots in the Roman army, but we do have these 4 units of Attacoti who were then raised and then taken all the way over to the Eastern Roman Empire. And later on, Christian apologists actually write that the Attacoti are cannibals. So it's a very interesting one there. Is that just because of their barbarian background and therefore they have to be painted more as barbarians? Or is there a cultural practice that these people practiced where they would maybe eat the dead of the enemies like the Maori or other people like that? And throughout history, cannibalization of your enemies has actually been something that various cultures have done. I'm not justifying that, by the way. I do think cannibalism is absolutely abhorrent, but I'm just pointing out something like in the past there may have been a cultural practice that the Attacoti actually did, or it could be something where it's propaganda again, painting a picture of the barbarians, this weird foreigners who do these odd things, these horrendous things, and obviously at that time cannibalism, and just like today, was considered absolutely horrendous and something that was very much frowned upon by the Romans. So there's an interesting one right there, studying and looking at this period. Archaeologists really struggle with the Great Barbarian Conspiracy. One of the reasons is because it's said that Theodorus then repaired a great deal of the structures, rebuilt a lot of the fortifications, and refortified the British Isles. And the thing about this is that even though, we have this written down, it's very hard to pinpoint a rebuilding of defences and a restructuring of the British garrison at this period. And many people have tried to point to various rebuildings of Hadrian's Wall or repairs to Hadrian's Wall to be a part of this repairs after the Great Barbarian Conspiracy. But it's very hard to tell what's going on. And we don't know what sort of repairs or what sort of restructuring would have occurred after this conspiracy or how large it was. Again, Marcellinus being so far away in Antioch, we don't know if it was a more regional thing. Was it in Yorkshire and in northern Britain that this was confined to? Is it a much larger thing? When we have the Count of the Saxon Shore, which is a later officer, was that the actual role that Nicardus was actually doing at the time? There are so many questions because we only have this one source, Marcellinus, writing about it, and we just can't really put it onto the archaeology. We can't place this apparent historic event into the actual archaeology and say, yeah, we can definitely find that this destruction here was caused by the Great Barbarian Conspiracy. it's just one of those things where it's so hard to tell and we can't really assure it. But it's one of those stories that then also could be a little bit of propaganda to build up the Theodosian dynasty, or to add to stories of the empire. And the fight against barbarians was a very popular propaganda piece that went on during the Roman period. Again, I'd love to know your thoughts. Write down in the comments some of your ideas, and it would be great to have a discussion down there. Do you think this was a planned barbarian conspiracy where these different peoples, the Scotii, the Picts, the Franks and the Saxons, all came together to come up with a plan to attack Britain and destabilize it? Or was it just hapstance that these different peoples attacked at the same time, caught the garrison off guard, and then there was a domino effect of bad luck that then destabilized the British Isles that was then turned into a propaganda piece? I'd love to hear your thoughts, or just to have that discussion down in the comments section. As always, thank you so much for watching, and if you would like to support me further, I do have a Ko-fi account and also a Patreon account down in the description, but there's no pressure from me, only if you would like to. Other than that, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me for another episode in the near future. Until then though, stay safe and well, and thank you very much.